Cool. All right. Welcome, everyone. So now we've kind of set up these meetings to be, how do you say that? I don't even know. Like once every 6 weeks. I was like, you say like bi-weekly, tri-weekly, but I don't know if there's like one thing for like
thrice fortnightly.
Anyway, so new thing for now is that we have an agenda that's in, if you look at the calendar invite, and for upcoming meetings, you can feel free to kind of add agenda items to there before we kick off. But let's actually start here. Mark, you said you wanted to add something on here?
Yeah, I'm happy to do like a short demo of just sort of our profile stuff.
Wait, can you remind me what project?
UBDI is the company. Yeah.
Cool. All right, as you see, we don't have too much stuff. We'll kind of give a general update on like where IDX and Ceramic is coming along, and then an update on some social verifications that we're working on. And yeah, that's basically it. Today is 25th. Would anyone want to take notes as I'm talking? That would be super helpful. I'll share the link to this.
Yeah, Joel, I'll take notes.
Thank you. All right, cool. So kind of just like a general update on where we're at with IDX and Ceramic. So last time we demoed like the alpha version of IDX and like how you can use it, how you can create definitions and have users add data to their references for each definition. So that's kind of still works the same way. The main developments now in Ceramic is that we have kind of getting closer to a more stable version of the protocol. So just a few days ago, we renamed the packages to be a little bit easier to use, and we're getting very close to like a feature freeze of the Ceramic protocol. So hopefully that should help everyone that's like wanting to build or building on Ceramic to kind of just not have so much things that are always changing. And then on IDX, like as I said, there hasn't been like too many updates there. We are working kind of this next few weeks on some kind of speed improvements there, but that's kind of all kind of happening in the background. And yeah, we're kind of also like stabilizing that library because that's also building on top of Ceramic. So since Ceramic has been kind of moving very quickly recently, we need to kind of stabilize that also based on the newer Ceramic versions. But that's kind of what's going on more broadly with Ceramic and IDX. Anything you would add to that, Paul?
No, I think it's a good summary. Yeah, lots of things happening in the background, but not really public facing now.
Well, yeah, I guess more generally also, we did a kind of, we had a hackathon together with another protocol called SIA, and that's basically like a database storage technology. And what we looked at there was like, how can we actually store data on SIA, but you cannot control it with your IDX, and you can like find the data through IDX. And what we ended up doing was like we encrypt like the SIA key and store that in IDX, and then the user, when they access their data, they can request access to that particular data set definition and get access to the data that's stored on the SIA network. And we're actually looking at doing something very similar with Textile. If some of you might be familiar, there's another database project on IPFS called Textile. And we actually have a few people in the community, in our community, that wants to build like different products with IDX and Textile. So we're working on like a first tutorial to kind of describe how that integration works. So textile is kind of more suited for like fast-paced, huge amount of data stored, and they kind of don't have an identity solution. So IDX kind of fits nicely in there. Anything you would add to that, Paul?
Not much. Yeah, just still in progress, but yeah, we should publish a tutorial in the coming weeks about how to integrate IDX and textile together.
Cool. All right. I know, Sanna, if you have some small piece to add there. Otherwise, I'll move over to kind of talking about the social verifications that we're working on together with Raid Guild. Cool. So one of the things that we have had in 3box and that we also want to have in our new profile app that we're working on is a way to kind of verify your Twitter, your GitHub, and other types of social verifications. And so we basically we have like a very simple verification service, but that wasn't like compliant with the kind of verifiable credential spec, and it was also like not implemented in a completely secure way. So what we did was that we specified like a new version of this verification service. And basically what it does is like for Twitter, you post your DID, and then there's a service that looks at that DID and sees that you've provided a signature to that service, and then issues a verifiable credential to you. And then you can store that credential in IDX. So we have that spec for Twitter, GitHub, and Discord. Because that's kind of, yeah, go ahead, Adam.
Oh, I was just going to ask how trusted and how centralized is that service? It seems like it'd have to be pretty trusted and pretty centralized to read the signatures and sign the verification.
Yeah. So this is like completely one service that is centralized, and like it's really up to the consumer then to decide if they trust that service or not. So it's not some kind of verification that you would rely on chain. It's more like when you go to an application and you see some other person, you can see that, oh, this person has been verified on that they have a verified Twitter, and then you can like see that. But potentially you could have verifications from like multiple different kind of verifiers.
Yeah, so I guess the verifiable piece of this is that you can verify that it was actually signed by that centralized service. You can't like check it yourself. Like we don't provide or does it provide a way for you to like look at that signature that's on Twitter and say, well, I want to like double check that this service is checked it correctly, so I'm going to check it too. There's no way to do that right now yet, or that's not what the verifiable credential means yet, right?
So it depends. In the case of GitHub and Twitter, you post your DID to there, and then the verifiable credential is just like a convenience thing for the consumer. That the verifiable credential also includes the URL to the tweet or to the gist on GitHub. So you could potentially go there, see that, oh, the DID is actually included there, and it's in the IDX document that's signed by this DID. So in that case,
okay, so there would be a way to independently verify that.
It depends. It depends. For Discord, it's different because in Discord there's no way to like publicly post a message. So in Discord, the verification is more trusted.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So it really depends on like which type of kind of account there is and like what type of functionality exists in that network. So that's something that Raid Guild, for those who are not familiar with Raid Guild, they're like a DAO that just hacks on stuff and build things. And we're collaborating with them to implement this verification service. So this is kind of the first 3 ones, but any new kind of account can be added in the same way, and it should be like fairly straightforward to kind of add more things to either this implementation of the verification service or something that mirrors that and issues from like some other entity that runs it. So I just wanted to quickly show, let's see. Where did my, oh, that's not right. Here. So we created like a definition for this to be stored in IDX. We call it the also known as definition. And yeah, it basically is like accounts that is linked.
You share the link to that
Yeah.
document you're looking at? Thanks.
Just open the chat. All right. So yeah, basically this is, so in IDX, for those who don't remember, you have a definition that's created by a developer. That definition defines the schema of references. Each user, when they go to an application that uses that definition, gets their own reference that they have full control over. So we can kind of have this developer created structure of the data, but user controlled instance of the data. And basically the schema for how the user's data should look like is basically an array of objects that have these properties. So protocol describes what protocol is being used, host, where it is. So this example, you have like GitHub, an ID. In this example, you have Mary Smith, claim. This is a URL to a gist. And attestation, this is either a did JWT verifiable credential, and then it just contains the kind of verifiable credential string. Yeah, and here's the schema for that. And so an example here of like what the content of one of these references might look like is you have like Twitter verification, it's a claim URL, and you have the verifiable credential that has been signed by some service that is given attestation. And as you can see, you can kind of add, if you have like ENS, for example, you could in theory like add like protocol, ENS, hosts, or ID. I don't know exactly what would make sense in that case, but like your name.
Yeah, it would be like protocol would be like Ethereum. So it's the protocol you're using to resolve, and the host would be like the ENS contract ID and the chain it's on. So it'd be like the ENS contract address like at Cape, what is it, or EIP 155.1 or something like that. So you're basically saying it's this contract address on Ethereum mainnet, and then the ID would be the domain or subdomain that you're claiming.
I don't know what's easier for like a consumer of this. It might be easier for a consumer to just know that it's ENS, but we don't need to like bike shit on that right now. And in that case, you might only have the claim, which is like some proof of that you own the DNS, or like maybe you don't even need the claim and the attestation, so you might omit this. But in some cases, you might only need the claim. In some cases, like Discord, you will only be able to like have this attestation.
So in the case of like DNS or ENS, you'd like use a TXT record to post your DID. So like only if you owned that name could you post the TXT record. And then since the DID is the one that owns this also known as document, we can verify that the DID, it's like a two-way binding, where like both accounts are posting the opposite identifier in a jurisdiction where only they could post, if that makes sense. So you have this like two-way cryptographic or like authenticated binding.
Yep, exactly. I think that's all for this kind of verified accounts that we're planning for IDX. Any other questions on that in particular? All right, cool. Then I would love to see a demo of you, Mark.
Awesome. Well, it's not going to be quite as technical as what you just went through. Ours is mostly just pretty front end. We've been just trying to make it easy for people to aggregate these identities from all these different services. So we've been focusing on just making it as simple as we can for the end user to take all of this data from all these accounts and link it. So this is sort of our data bank page right now. This is what our users will come into. So right now I've got Robinhood selected. It'll show you all my Bitcoin miners I've been buying for months that are finally paying some dividends. You can see just basically every trade I've ever made. And then once you have this, you can post those trades to groups. So we have crypto groups where you can either post the trades or just stream them in live time, so other group members can see them. We've got like little leaderboards that'll show, you know, top traders, people can post articles and so on and so forth. From there, once you've actually linked the data, we'll give you little insights about it from other sources. My Wi-Fi is pretty terrible, so this might take a little while, but essentially we'll just tell you a little bit about what each bit of data is that you're connecting here. So for LinkedIn, that'll just be what your past jobs might be, your ad buckets. We're taking a lot of like ad matching criteria so that you can match with people based on the things that, you know, LinkedIn and Twitter are taking on you. For fitness, it might just be activity that you're doing. Oh, I don't have Strava because I haven't been working out. Music, just the songs you're listening to and so forth. So that's all there. And once you've aggregated all of this, you can use it to create these public profiles. So you can post these to your public profile, and then say I click on a trade in that trade feed, it'll pop up my public profile so that users can see any little bits of this data that I want to expose on my profile. So it'll be a mix of my posts that I've made to various groups, the trades I've made, posts on LinkedIn, basically anything that you want to expose to the world, and you can bring this with you kind of wherever you want to go. So that is sort of the idea. And then you've got these little like just sort of self-entered traits that just tell you like little things about just like self-entered stuff. So that's sort of just the broad overview, and then you can earn with it. We connected with Uphold, so you can cash out in cryptos, stock, whatever's through Uphold. We tie that private key to the profile. So we haven't done a ton with that yet, but we are letting our users get paid out in crypto, which is kind of fun. And then on home, we just have all these different interest groups. So in fitness, you can stream your runs. You know, in gamers, you can stream the games you're playing on Steam, or you can stream your Twitch games. Music, you can just post songs, stuff like that. And on the trading side, obviously trades. So that's pretty much where we're at right now. It's just sort of a mix of sort of like a Reddit and a Facebook on the front end. On the back end, we can match with ads for any of these criteria. So for a crypto exchange, we can find people who are doing, you know, 100 trades a day, or who have, you know, 10 Bitcoin that they're trading around, or whatever that might be. So the targeting is really solid at this point. We have a back end for all of that stuff. But yeah, this is basically where it's at. And I think just the profile front end is kind of what we imagined for bringing with you to different places around sort of Web 3.0.
Cool. I mean, this was like so many things. So you have, but I guess the main three things is like you have the data bank, the profile, and like the home thing. And like,
yep.
The idea is that you import data from like different services into the data bank, and then you kind of use that within the kind of application.
Yep, exactly. So like previously we did like a study with Harvard Business School. They wanted to study like IRS stimulus check spending. So we paid our members to do a study where they sent off their financial data. We got like 1.2 million rows of financial data. Each person got paid, I think, $12 to do that. And then there was like $180 follow-up to answer some questions after that to say, you know, well, once they identified the people who they were like, these people are at risk, or we really want to know how this helped them in this way, they paid them extra. So it's built to be like a super granular targeting system that pays the users every time their data is used to target them.
Maybe this is like more into the future, but would there potentially be a way where I can like choose myself how kind of targeting is happening, or like how which
Yeah,
things might come up, because like I might be interested in some things but not other things, and like how can I help my data promote some things rather than other things?
yeah, and so that's, you know, one thing. So everything is just as much as you want to add right now, so we can target you more granularly the more you add, but based on what you add we can do so. And we're going to start permission. So right now we just have a basic where you can turn on targeting for either ads or research. You can just choose between the two. And you can actually expose in different places, different pieces of data. So by tribe, I can customize my profile so that with crypto people, they can see different parts of my data, whereas with the fitness group, they might see just certain parts of my data. And we're gonna extrapolate that out more to the client side. But frankly, we just haven't had, we don't want to give people too granular of control at that level quite yet, because they just don't know what they're doing with it. But it is sort of, that is what we imagine, is this is like your preferences warehouse. This is where you say, this is what I'm interested in, this is who I am, and this is what I would like to be shown going forward. And that's, we talked to like Facebook, they were super interested in that because they can't convince people to tell them what they actually want, they just have to infer it. So there is something there, but we do need to bake it out a little bit.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
And so Mark, what's next for you, or like what are some of your upcoming priorities?
I mean, right now we're just really trying to grow the user base for the most part. I think we're just trying to find partnerships that give people use cases for what they're doing, what they're building. We're trying to find small clients and use cases to give them a little bit of money here and there so they just realize it. But yeah, generally, I think we're just trying to grow the user base, trying to make sure they have something that can be taken with them that's interesting, that is useful.
Cool. All right. Any kind of last minute demos or presentations or anything like that? Yeah, Adam.
Yeah, so I was wondering if anyone wants to make a BrightID connection with me. We could do a group connection. If you guys have your BrightID apps, I would love to do that.
Let's do it. I need to download the app though.
Yeah, please do. Go to either App Store, Google, or Apple App Store, and just look for BrightID and download it. When you go through the onboarding, it's going to ask you for a name and a photo, and I want to be very clear that that name and photo gets shared peer-to-peer with people that you connect to. That's the only time it leaves your device. Yeah, it's not like, you know, it's going up to a server somewhere like Facebook or something like that. And that's just to help people who you're connecting with to, you know that they're connecting with the person they think they're connecting with. And you can make it whatever you want, as long as you feel that'll help people recognize you. Then we can start making that group connection. Excellent. So what I'll do is I'll hold up the code. So I go to my code, and I'm going to change it to a group code. By hitting the slider at top, I changed it to a group code. So now everyone here can scan this, and then we'll all start to see each other pop up in this group connection. And then one by one, we will sort of make a connection with everybody. And you'll get to choose how well you feel you know that person. This is like a new feature, a very important feature of BrightID.
That's so hard.
Oh, is it hard to scan this?
No, it's hard to decide how well how did I decide?
Yeah, well, it's kind of subjective, and I would say, yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll be a problem for anyone to kind of default on the lower, like just met, because there's just met and already know right now, and then they're suspicious. So I hope you don't think I'm suspicious, but if you feel like you just met me, that's fine. I'm not offended. And it's kind of unilateral how you okay, cool. So I'm getting one. Okay, great. So this is Joel, obviously. I'm gonna put already known because I've known Joel for a while. Same with Michael. And Yeah. So anyways, it's totally subjective and you can update it later. So like, if you keep running into someone and you feel more confident, you can upgrade them.
Nice.
And so, yeah, this connection making helps the BrightID graph. And when there's different ways to analyze this data. Like I said, the name and profile do not get associated with your identifier in BrightID that's being analyzed by the BrightID nodes. If there's different verification levels, and so some application may decide, we just want like just some basic minimal trust, saying that this person is likely to not be in the graph more than once, and other applications may be really strict, so you may have to have be really well connected to pass their verification. So let's see, let's go back to that code just in case.
Could I scan that real quick? Yeah.
Yeah.
My Wi-Fi is a little slower than you guys got your gigabit over there. I know it.
Yeah, let's try it again.
If you do this, then I will leave. But first, we gotta finish your lesson. Sit.
Oh, and also if someone's on their phone and would like to try this, and so in other words, they don't have the ability to scan, let me know and I will drop I can create a text version of this that you can click on your phone and put it in I can put it in the chat. So just raise your hand or type something if you want me to do that for you.
Yeah, I'm not sure why mine isn't scanning in. Maybe my brightness is
probably
not
my
enough.
fault.
It might just be this. It's probably the
Should be
sun
better
in the background, honestly.
darker.
Yeah, it says downloading now. I think the sun is.
Okay, good. So we're good. Okay, great. Yeah, and I see you now. Cool. Okay, I see. This is nice. See, it says I already connected, so I'm getting another connection request, and it says I already connected with Joel, and then it tells me what I already know about him, that we have one mutual connection and he's got 2 connections. So he told me that he was new, so I'm expecting this. So I'm happy to do this. Now, if something weird popped up, like maybe I wasn't expecting a connection from Joel, and these all come through pre-existing trusted channels, like this Zoom meeting that we're doing. If I got that out of the blue and I wasn't expecting it, I would mark it as suspicious. Or if I was connecting with Joel and something like this, and something weird happened, and maybe I didn't want to make a socially awkward scene about it, but something weird happened, and this profile pops up that's looks like it's Joel, but it says that I've never connected to him before when I know I have, or something weird, like something seems off, I can just mark it as suspicious, and I don't have to make a scene about it or anything. So okay, so Mark, cool. Nice to meet you. Okay, great. Excellent.
And so basically, because the name and the photo are, for new users at least, unverified through some means, then you're relying on some well-known context where you're receiving these inputs. Like if you were to receive it out of the blue, then you would have no way to know that it's actually Joel, so you wouldn't accept it.
Yeah. So if I got through some, if some Discord user that I don't really know sends me a BrightID link and I pop it up and it's apparently supposed to be my grandma or something, that's highly suspicious. Also the profiles, I can change my name and photo, and if I push that data to you, then there's another check there where I say, okay, this is the old, it shows them side by side. It says this was the old profile, this is the new, or this is the new, yeah, the old profile, the new profile. Does this seem okay, or does this seem like it says report abuse. It's very clear that if this does not seem okay, like someone's trying to impersonate someone else or something, you can flag them right there. So we put in multiple checks. So we're trying to have it, give the user multiple ways to report suspicious activity.
Cool. I'm glad I'm connected to some people that I know well. Yeah,
this is good. And so, the last thing I want to share, I'm going to share a link. apps.brightid.org. So now that you've made some steps towards being verified, or maybe you are verified now for some of these applications, you can go check them out at apps.brightid.org. A lot of them are giveaways that want to try to give just one thing to each participant to try to stop civil attacks. Obviously, Gitcoin's in there. That's pretty sweet. And some of them are kind of voting or polling type of apps where they want to limit people to one vote. So those are the two big ones, but there's other possible cool applications of BrightID that haven't even been explored yet. And we talked about profiles on Discord. There's a Discord BrightID bot that you can invite to your server that will allow people to scan a QR code and then give it a verified role. So you could do something clever like, you know, use it as spam protection or something like that. So, or use it as an airdrop through your Discord. It's like probably the lowest friction way to bring BrightID into whatever you're doing. So.
All right.
Set up your computer downstairs.
That's very cool. Thank you. All right. Any other kind of last thoughts or things anyone want to talk about?
Yeah, so I guess just like those not on the call, I guess what we chatted about last time when it comes to the dProfiles collab and like where things began to land and potentially relevant for some of the others on this call. But basically with metagame and Aragon and OneHive and the various other folks on the call, Gitcoin, where we landed with dProfiles is basically that it's not, dProfiles is not one, you know, like simple basic profile that every single application will use wholesale, but rather since there's this IDX framework where basically a user can maintain a list of data sets that are sort of qualified as definitions. Like you can have, you know, a list of any number of definitions that sort of specify certain data sets about you that the community was trying to sort of build upon the basic profile that will sort of come out of the box in IDX, like, you know, your, you know, schema.org person or basic profile, but then extend it with commonly used other data sets. So some were saying like the DAOs you're in might be like a list of DAOs that you're in might be its own definition, and a list of skills you have, you know, might be a different definition. And so actually like what the dProfile might mean is that it's, you know, dynamically, applications would dynamically pull in and or contribute to a set of definitions about a user that sort of can collectively represent their data as is needed by that application. Because different DAO frameworks and interfaces will want different sets of data to sort of display about users. And, you know, it would be really hard to create one big profile schema that includes all of the data that everyone might need. So it makes more sense to keep them as more granular definitions or granular schemas and have them accessed that way. So I think like, for example, you know, I still don't know yet whether BrightID would be like its own definition, like this is like my BrightID or something like that, and you can store it that way, or if that would also go into the also known as type of a category that Joel had mentioned before, or actually like how granular or aggregate some of these pieces might be. But yeah, I think that's really where the thought is now, is just basically like how can we as a community create some of these IDX definitions that provide the most utility for all apps. So basically like, you know, you can, when you're pulling in all of a user's other data about them, like profiles and application data from you know, textile DBs or Sky DBs, you can also, with that same interface, like pull in their BrightID, you know, whether it's the number of connections they have or their verification status into their application. So really, like, IDX almost begins to function like this user-centric API for data that might be contributed to through various other platforms or networks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see like once which types of data make sense in like what format, and there would probably be like a bunch of cross use, but a bunch of use that's like very segmented to some applications. Cool. I think that's it. Thanks for jumping on, everyone, and hope to see you all in 6 weeks.
Yep, we're in the Discord in the meantime.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
It's been
Thank you.
great.
Yeah, so just a question about the Discord. So is there like a special, I don't go on to the Discord much, but is there, does this group have its own channel for discussion, or is that's in the Ceramic, I suppose, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
in
we
the Ceramic
don't,
Discord.
we don't yet. We might create one, but we might also
Okay.
create like bridged discords with other teams. So let's see.
Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Hi, I haven't said anything. It's great to see all the presentations today. I learned new things. A question, I hate, I'm gonna bring it up again, is around the specific, like around the, what is the IPR relative to the specification? And I know I've raised this point before, but I am still concerned that it's just open source licensed, and the IPR around designing specifications isn't necessarily addressed by that.
So I mean, the specification itself is not open source, or maybe you call it open source, but it's Creative Commons.
Maybe. Anyway,
basically we're dropping all copyright on the specification.
right, but it's not. So this is where there's like this gap between the sort of grassroots developer driven work and the folks who end up looking at things from a different perspective. This happened in the early days of OpenID forming, which is how I know about it, because I was there watching that all happen. So the clearing specifications for their IPR around potential patents that are included or other enforcement actions that might be taken is different than the just saying it's Creative Commons. Like, okay, but like if I implement the specification, is it free in the sense that specifications that are driven through the IETF or W3C are, because they're IPR protected as they go through the process. So there aren't things in them that can go and be enforced later. And I know this isn't a concern for grassroots developers, but it's a concern if you are seeking to have widespread broad adoption beyond that type of community.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're happy to kind of add something like that whenever it's needed.
Yes,
Right now we
that
have
is
like,
good to hear. And it is easier to do IPR clearing for specifications much earlier in their development than later, because if you do it later, then you have to go find everybody who contributed and make them sign a thing, which is a hard thing, versus like, here's the thing to sign to get in the door and contribute. And it's a choice. It's both are valid ways to do it. One is easier than the other.
yep, yeah. Thanks for explaining that.
So
Yeah, I think we should begin to consider something like that. You know, I think it's just a bit of a workload challenge, but I see the trade-off for immediacy versus, punting something until later. Just like the legal overhead of making sure that that's all right.
Yeah.
I think we'd want to do in the proper way. So if there are any like good examples or sources of these agreements that we might be able to lean on, it might help us like short circuit it. But we're not fundamentally opposed in any way to doing these things. I think for us, it's just like small team bandwidth type of a thing where, we don't have a full team of people by enterprises that can like, there's a group of people whose whole job this is. So,
right. I know. And I'm really trying to help. I'm not trying to put a damper on things. It's just, I would like to see, I'm trying to be supportive in raising this issue. So I hope you hear that in what I'm saying. And, an option is also to go and nest the specification under a group that already takes care of this type of thing, right? So, diff being one potential place, there are others. So that's another way to just get it out as something that isn't your job to do, but you get to do what you love, which is moving the spec and the work forward. Anyways, this isn't going to get solved in this call. I just wanted to name it while we were in voice and see if I can help in some way, or at least encourage it.
Yep. I guess we have to explore those options more and think more about it. So thank you.
And
Okay.
Kalia, what do you think, what do you think it would mean to nest under at least some of these identity specs and definitions and standards, like under a different org? Like, would that mean migrating the actual like GitHub content to them? Would that mean like hosting these meetings under them? Would that mean?
Yeah, I mean, so those are great questions. I think it, at least Diff recently has been forming partnerships with different orgs and sort of managing items jointly, and each group doing what it does best. So it just signed an agreement with the OpenID Foundation around some work, and we have one of the working groups is a joint item with the credentials community group of the W3C. And they also signed like a cooperation agreement with Aries and pulled in a specification from Aries, which was a coding based framework that didn't have IPR for specifications. And they basically took the thing that was spec like out of the Aries repository and moved it over to Diff. So I think, yeah, it's worth, if you want to put me on a CC on an email, we can have a clearer conversation with the people who lead Diff, and I'm happy to help facilitate that, because there's a range of options. It isn't like there's just one thing.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll shoot you an email, and we can think about just exploring some of those, because yeah, like we said, we're not opposed to these things. I think the main thing where our concern is if they're in an entirely separate repo and org and creating friction for contribution, or like confusion as to how these things relate. I think we'd want to avoid that, but I agree that the standards, or at least some of the specs and things that we're working on, are applicable to the Diff community or W3C, because as we've had this conversation many times before, but IDX, the protocol and the specs that are extending IDX for various use cases, like are broadly applicable and can plug in the other work that's going on there. So yeah, something that that I'll email you about, and we can start to think about options on the table for those stuff.
Awesome.
Cool. And I'll share the notes from this call back in the CEA channel, just so others can see it. they didn't join. And yeah, then we'll see the rest of you either on Discord or at the next call.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.